Now, this is for you high performers because you're probably an entrepreneur, you're probably a business leader, you're probably having an inkling that you need to be able to have your brain and body performing better for you to be better in life at the end of the day. And that's why I'm sitting down with Justin right now, because he's literally one of the best in the world when it comes to being able to get your body and your brain performing. Because to be perfectly honest, I know a lot of people aren't going to like this. A lot of personal trainers aren't going to like this. What I'm about to say right now is a lot of people are just not doing a great job, especially when it comes to high performers being able to get in great shape and being able to perform in a day-to-day level now. Because when we really look at it, and look, Justin, how long have you been in this world doing what we do?
I've been training, working in the industry now for 18 years. Since
18.
I was a whippersnapper. I was 15 when I started out, and then went to high school, then went to uni and everything else afterwards. But in the industry, I started out doing the grind, packing tons of weight away in a gym. Earned my stripes the hard way.
Well, dude,
very hard
you have an incredible physique yourself, but I know that you've been being able to transform people's bodies. Literally, I regard you as the best, and that's why I'm literally having this conversation.
Thank you, Chris.
Right now. I've been doing this since I was 18 as a personal trainer. Do you know what I mean? So it's 13, 14 years now of me being in this. So we've got a collective, some pretty good experience in this game. And so when it comes down to especially doing the CEOs, the entrepreneurs, the business leaders, the people that need to really perform day in, day out, they can't follow the traditional mainstream diet, weight loss, information. It's just never going to work. And the person listening, watching us right now, you've probably tried the diets. Maybe you've lost a little bit of weight, but you've probably found it back again, and you're not feeling great when you go through this as well. So when it comes to what we're talking about right now, Justin, like, why is it that you think people are struggling so hard when it comes to actually like getting in shape, but them actually showing up the best that they need to on a day-to-day level?
I think it's because they're getting their advice from the wrong sources. And the reason why I say that, Chris, I've had a very personal, heavy background of having had a lot of stress, having gone through a breakdown, an emotional breakdown a few years back. And I realized prior to all of that, I was a good trainer, but I wasn't necessarily the best coach because I didn't understand my audience, because I didn't live in their shoes. And it was only until I got heavily involved in business myself, that business unfortunately failed because I didn't have enough experience and know-how, to the point where the business I'm doing now is succeeding. So once you fail, you keep trying, and eventually it comes right. But through that whole process, Chris, I realized and started to appreciate the reality that the type of people that are listening to this video actually face. That it's not all about living the athlete's lifestyle. It's about living the corporate athlete's lifestyle, which is a whole different kettle of fish. So I think the biggest reason why people get bad results is because they're getting the advice generally in the community of fitness. Most trainers are under the age of 28. Right? And most of those trainers have never ran a business, right? Or more likely haven't worked more than 6, maybe 9 hours days. There were countless years that I worked 12, 14-hour days. So I know what it is to have sleep deprivation. I know what it is to be, even it goes as far as having to see psychiatric help for an emotional breakdown due to stress. Wasn't a nice time that I went through, but it was very valuable because it provided me with the insight to be able to help people not to get to that point.
Dude, that's so true. And I appreciate you sharing that, because especially I know from my experience, like I competed as a physique athlete, and I was the dude that would just do anything to be in shape and be peeled and have veins running down my abs. And at the same time, I was there training CEOs, politicians, doing MMA athletes, bikini models, Arab sheikhs. But then I could see the disconnect between me trying to force feed, and this was my immaturity. I was trying to force feed what I was doing to them. Now, today, being in the masterminds, being in the business meetings, being able to be around 7, 8, 9-figure entrepreneurs, I can see that them trying to do what this other stuff that so much of the fitness industry is trying to cram down their throat will never work for them at all. And I feel like that's exactly why we're doing what we're doing right now. And I know that I'm biased, but why we get those far superior results compared to everybody else. And that really
apart
comes
from just
down to it.
getting apart from just getting like immediate results, anybody can, anybody with half a brain can get immediate results without a doubt. It's sustaining them. It's
Mm,
hanging on to them. Now that's the hard part, because that requires, components that you can integrate into your life, into a busy life, right? I mean, most people, even working in corporate positions, and I've also, like yourself, I did exactly the same thing, made the mistake of utilizing my ego in my youth, thinking that everybody should be doing what I'm doing in order to look the way that they want to look. And yes, even in those situations, there were corporate guys that were able to take 3 months out of their busy work schedule and dedicate their lives to training hard. But guess what? 3 months is not your life, and 3 months goes by very quickly. Yes, you'll have some great after pictures, but what does that all mean if you can't sustain it? And that's the biggest determining factor, is sustainability
dude, that's
above
so
and
important,
beyond.
because what's the point of like doing getting in shape if you can't stay in shape? And especially as well, and this is where I see a lot of like the corporates and the CEOs and the entrepreneurs, they'll spend say 3-4 months like going hard at their training, but at the same time their business starts to tank at the same time, because they're not having the energy, the focus, the actual minerals needed for them to be able to do what they need to do in their business, while at the same time being able to take care of their body. And I get this question a lot when I walk into these masterminds. People will say like, how is it that you do it? And I really boiled it down to, and especially so much from what I've learned from you, Justin, is like, there's three basic things. There's three components of this. There is plan. You need the right plan tailored to yourself, individuality. And I want you to speak on that, because you speak on that so perfectly. So there's a plan. Then there's tools, which is simply, how do I know what I need to do at the end of the day? Do I know how to train properly? Do I know how to do my food, my prep, my cooking? Like, do I need to be able to meditate? What about mindfulness? There's a plethora of those different things, but essentially
Yeah.
the tools of knowing what it is you need to do. And then thirdly, there's the help along the way, because I've been able to lean on you, Justin, so many times, and I appreciate that, because I'll have questions and I'll be like, what the hell do I do in this situation? And if people don't have that third factor of help along the way, especially individualized and specific to themselves, you fall off the bandwagon pretty quickly. So I'd love to know, Justin, why is it that individuality is so important when it comes to doing crafting these results that we get? And why, or do you think even give them a bit of an inkling into like doing how it is that we do what we do in this program?
It's the funny thing about individuality. It's a word that's thrown around quite often, but I don't think many people understand what that really means. Now, there's a big difference between a hypothesis and a prognosis.
Tell
Okay.
me more, brother.
So a hypothesis is based on speculation on previous examples or previous experience. A prognosis is definitive. It uses quantifiable evidence in order to be able to indicate a certain outcome, or a probable or very likely outcome. Okay, that's a prognosis. And with a prognosis, we're able to define what a person exactly needs to do, instead of what we think a person needs to do. And that is extremely vital behind any planning process. Because if you are just going to go on a hypothesis, you are considering what worked for the last client that you helped. But that last client has different genes. That last client has different capacity of detoxification. That last client has a different element of digestion, and also a different psychological state. Another big problem when it comes to planning is planning requires small steps in order to actualize great outcomes. And you mentioned before, meditation, amongst other lifestyle factors that people may need to consider. But that's another thing that's happening in the world in which we live in, apart from fitness, is information overload, right? People get shell shocked not knowing what to do because they have everything to do.
How do you help tie this into, especially when we are collecting biometrics, especially when it comes to like HIV and blood glucose? How does this actually tie in so they understand, why we are collecting? When we say to a client, hey, we want you to collect your HIV, we want you to be able to collect your blood glucose measurements in the morning, we want you to be able to do blood work. Do you know what I mean? This is something that's when I say this, they're like, wow, like what the hell? Like they need to know more. Do you want to kind of like open Pandora's box into why this happens?
Most definitely. So uh, any basic biometric, so we call it at-home testing, right? When it comes to temperature, comes to blood glucose, heart rate variability, blood pressure, any basic tool that you can utilize in the comfort of your home, that's at-home testing. They're all useful, but in isolation, they don't really tell you much. Right? Yes, sure, high glucose can tell you to have a lot of blood sugar and you might have an issue with insulin. But it doesn't necessarily tell you on its own accord what could be happening with the nervous system to instigate the fact that your insulin receptor sensitivity or the output or your catecholamine regulation, which is stress hormones, catecholamines, is becoming imbalanced. It doesn't tell you that. So why we collect three major biometrics, which is temperature, heart rate variability, and two, that resting pulse, as well as in certain instances, postprandial, which means after a meal, pulse as well, and glucose in a fasted state, and in certain instances, as and when needed, and not consistently. We're not going to ask our clients to always measure their glucose after every meal. There will be times where chaos ensues, and when it does, we take the right measures in order to figure out the solution, and that's when we ask them to measure after a meal. But it's not just them in isolation that makes it work. It is looking at them all together. So for example, Chris, if you were to have an elevated glucose in the morning, but your HRV points were measuring rather in a parasympathetically excessive point. So you get parasympathetic and sympathetic, calm and excited. Parasympathetic is more of a state of calm. So when your HRV is in an excessive state of calm, it means that it's going into a deep state of recovery, right? With high glucose, that shows that you're in a state of inflammation. So it's not a question, and if you're in a state of inflammation, what should you do for the body? Most practitioners, coaches, nutritionists would say to those that have high glucose, on a day of high glucose, eat less carbs, right? Which is the worst thing that you can do. Firstly, carbohydrates aren't evil, depending on the source. Can determine whether they're good or bad for you. Carbohydrate, nature is a wonderful thing. It's far more intelligent than any of us could ever be, because most of the nutrients required to break down carbohydrates are actually found in natural carbohydrates, right? So if you were just to process that for a second, if you were to have high glucose, which is the simple version of carbohydrates, is to break down the accessible version to our body. What do you think you need to metabolize that glucose, or those glucose? All the precursors and all the nutrients that are found in natural carbohydrate that help to process carbohydrate. Nature's wonderful. It doesn't complicate things we do, right?
It's so true, especially when you see so many diets right now, and you've got one side saying you have to be vegan, the other side you have to be carnivore, one side saying like, don't eat any carbs like whatsoever, like keto's the way to go. And we see so many entrepreneurs try these things, and they just, unfortunately, the vast majority just crash and fail. And that's the thing that sucks, is because there's so much wasted time, effort, and resources.
Completely. And I think, look, every diet has its place. Like a ketogenic diet is fantastic for those who are getting older and have poor growth hormone release, as an example. But that doesn't mean it needs to be a staple. Because when chaos ensues, so should a strategy take place. And so it's not to say that I'm advocating that you should always have carbohydrate or you shouldn't have carbohydrate. But what we do is we actually track real-time effect of what's going on in your physiology. So that even if you are following a ketogenic, fasting, zone, whatever diet plan you're following, during the duration of you applying that protocol, if you were to think that your body's going to be able to maintain the state of consistency and not go out of regulation, then that's just crazy thinking, because that's not how the body works. Yeah. But during that period of application, there might be micro periods where we need to alter it. in order to reestablish your body into a point where it can receive those dietary means at a healthier position. And this is why in this instance, this example, the advocation of carbohydrates goes a long way because it resets the clock so that the diet that you're trying to utilize to improve growth hormone in this scenario can actually take effect. But if you're trying to take a ketogenic diet to improve growth hormone, but your glucose is shooting right through the roof and you're sympathetically dominant, your HRV is going down into the tank, then what is the likelihood that you're going to be able to go and do exercise, which is one of the biggest catalysts to growth hormone release in the body? It's very poor. And another factor to consider as well, if you have high amounts of oxidative stress going on in the body, which is indicative of high glucose levels, as an example, your body's ability to be able to what they call emulsify, which is basically a fancy word to break down fats and absorb them into the body, to change their structure and absorb them into the body, becomes massively impaired. So on that day, you're going to swarm down fats. Oh, I'm going to bring down inflammation. Give me those omega-3s, fish oil, fish oil, fish oil. But your body is not processing it properly because your oxidative load's so high and your bile function's poor. So
This was
we
a game
know
changer.
all of that.
When you told me this, Justin, this was a game changer for myself. And that was what I was like, oh my God, like I was completely doing the wrong thing, thinking, oh yeah, if I eat more fat, it's going to be good for me. Do you know what I mean? But it just wasn't, because my body was just not in the actual state to be able to use those fats. And it just was not happy about that.
No. And also, you're psychologically, you're not going to be in a happy state either. It's the reason why people get miserable when they follow high-fat, low-carb diets, where they shouldn't be, because fats are, in essence, there are a lot of nutrients found in fat that actually help the mood, are supposed to regulate neurotransmitters. But if you're not absorbing the fat, you're not getting all those nutrients, and then everything falls away.
Yeah. Okay. So anyone listening and watching right now, and if Justin's talk is kind of like going straight over the top of your head, I totally understand. It's because he's one of the smartest dudes in this world, and I love you, Justin. It's amazing. Now, there's two big things that we get asked, especially Justin, when it comes to clients wanting to come on board. One is, well, I'm a really busy person. How am I supposed to fit this into my lifestyle? I'm already working around the clock, and I get it. Do you know what I mean? Like, I run multiple businesses. I have 3 daughters, a wife. We're living around the world. Like, it's pretty crazy at this time, but at the same time, I'm still able to do what I need to do to look and feel the way that I want to be able to look and feel. So when it comes to you, Justin, needing to answer this question, if someone comes to you and goes, look, I don't know if I've got time to be able to do this, what does you want to say to them?
I love that question. I so love this question because there's always an excuse, right? Everybody, this is not me having a go at those that actually feel that way. It's warranted. I've been there. I know. But if I sometimes still go through it certain days, but I'll have the understanding as to why I'm going through it, and I'm able to take the steps to reset things. It's called the magpie syndrome, right? We like to look at things that are shiny and we get distracted by them. And then we inevitably think that we don't have enough time because we're running after all the shiny things. So how do we change that perspective? We shift our focus onto the stuff that's not so shiny. Well, initially it doesn't look shiny, and we make it shiny. We buffer it up, because I can tell you the first week is tough. After that, it's easy. Measuring your glucose in the morning, it's tedious when you haven't done it. But it's like anything else. If you haven't gone for a walk in the morning and you get up, you're like, oh, the last thing I want to do now is to go for a walk for half an hour. But once you start going for a walk and you get fresh air, and you're like, well, this is actually quite nice. And then it becomes shiny because then you look toward it as a stress relief in the morning. And it's the same thing when it becomes to the point of acknowledging where you are. In certain mornings when you're not feeling great and you don't understand why you're not feeling great, you're left feeling helpless. But when you utilize measuring certain biometrics and they correlate as to why you're not feeling great, guess what? You're empowered because there are certain strategies and there is a certain coach that's at your disposal to give you suggestions of what you can do in order to reinstill calm back into your life. And guess what? When you're in a state of calm, you don't feel in a state of chaos, which means your perception of time changes as well, right? So let me ask you a question, Chris. How much of the scenery in a landscape would you notice if you're going on a bullet train as opposed to going on a nice, slow steam train?
Oh, dude, I'd much rather be on the bicycle riding down. Just look at all the beautiful scenery. Of course, yeah, the bullet train, you see nothing.
Right? And when you're going at the speed of light, you end up making mistakes, which means you have to continue to go at the speed of light to make up for those mistakes. And eventually you can't breathe anymore because all you're doing is making mistakes. So let's slow that train down so you become more proficient in being able to do the things the first time around without having to keep on revisiting the same topic of consideration.
You know, I love that you said that as well, because I think it's that vicious cycle that so many people fall into, and it's too many compromises. It's making too many compromises. It's saying, oh, I have to work on my company and therefore I lose my relationships with my family, or I want to make money and therefore I can't stay in great shape. And this is the constant compromises going around because you're trying to chase so many different things, especially when it comes to time. Most of the people actually gain so much time because they're functioning at such a higher level. You get more done in less time at the end of the day. And you're also perceiving time in such a better manner as well. So life just becomes a lot better. Now, the one thing I really want to make sure that we tick off is a lot of people are going to be saying, well, this sounds really good, Chris and Justin, but maybe my budget can't allow this. Do you know what I mean? Like, I don't know if I've got a lot of money to be able to spend on this stuff, which I totally understand. But I think at the end of the day as well, especially for high performers, this is when they know that this is where they're going to be making money from this. And we have plenty of clients that have clearly come back and they can see a correlation between us being able to help them to them being able to make more money because they're performing it at a higher level, which is why we called it high performance fitness at the end of the day. Now, when someone comes in and goes, Justin, look, you're a really good dude. You're super smart, but I just don't know if I can fit this in my budget. What do you say to them?
Well, firstly, you got to think about what it is that you are comparing it to. What are you comparing? Because it's an investment. Let's just be frank about it, right? This project is an investment in yourself. Education is an investment. And this is not just an advocation of training. This is not a personal training program that you're going to go down to your local gym and have the big bodybuilder who I used to be shout and scream at you in order to do more reps. It's above and beyond all of that, right? That's not an investment. That's not an education. That's an advocation. You may as well just sign up to become a Marine. And that's all good and well for those of you who want to become a soldier, but those of you who want to run a business, you'll know that in order to think like a business, well, to be able to perform in a business, you think like a leader, not a soldier. Soldiers follow orders. You need to be the guy that gives orders, right? So in order for you to be empowered, to be able to know how to give better orders to your body, you need an education. And this is what this provides. So in terms of like the value that it gives you, you got to ask how much money, and more importantly, how much time have you wasted trying everything else, being beasted, shouted at military boot camps, starved yourself, gone through countless moments of deprivation and craving and what have you, to get yourself to the point right now where you're not happy with you, how you look or how you feel. And ask yourself, how much money have you spent in the past on supplementation? And once again, the time factor, how much time have you tried to invest in yourself toward better health? And what is the return on all that investment? Because time is the biggest investment. What's the return been? Because if the return was a good return, then you wouldn't be listening to this.
True.
Right?
Very true.
So how about instead of investing in some, excuse my French, shitty stock, why not invest in the Google of the fitness stock and make sure that you're going to be getting incremental return on your investment every single year?
Yeah.
And that's exactly it. It's the stock that you put your trust into that makes a difference. And this stock works.
Well,
Simply.
it's the truth, Justin. And I think that's the thing. When you and I came together and we were mulling over and really chewing the fat on the ideas of doing, we wanted to do this project. We wanted to create this program. Honestly, on a business perspective, it's not the smartest idea. It's not a scalable program. We can't have tons and tons and tons of people in this. It is so specific. It is so individualized. It was more a case of this is going to become the absolute best possible offering for someone to be able to actually take control of their body, control of their health, control of their mind, and be able to best perform on a day-to-day level as well. And that's what I'm really excited about, because it was like, no, let's actually create the best. Like, this is actually it. And the cool thing is, I mean, all of the actual clients that have gone through this, like, they just rave about it. And so the feedback has been Do you know what I mean? Immense. So that's the coolest thing in the world. Now, obviously, if you want to be able to actually join in this program, or at least us be able to figure out, are you a good fit to be able to join and answer all of your questions and get you a custom plan, I'll pop a link somewhere below this video and you just book in for your strategy call. You just got to put a quick application so we know if we can actually help you, then we can take you through the next steps really easily. Justin, what's kind of like last parting words for you, brother, that you want to leave with everyone?
I think that one really needs to understand that toward any journey that's going to provide a success, the planning behind that journey needs to be quantifiable. And that's the biggest and the hardest lesson that I have learned in multiple aspects of my life. It's one thing to have a dream. It's another thing to know how to put the dream into action, right? And this is where the process of, there's been many people in the past who have said the similar thing, is that human beings are capable of being anything. I think one of my favorite is Les Brown, the motivational speaker. He's a brilliant guy to listen to, especially in the morning. And he said, human beings are able to think of something, speak of something, and actualize it. But there's one thing, when you speak of something, you need to not just talk a lot of crap, because a lot of people do. You need to be able to actually substantiate what you're saying. And there's no better way of substantiating anything than with objective understanding of where you are and where you can go, setting the right goals. And goal setting is not a simple procedure of just saying, oh, I would love to lose 10 kilograms of fat and grow 5 kilos of muscle. Let's go and do it. Well, firstly, what is your capacity? We got to figure that out. And it's not just about a subjective questionnaire. Although we do use those for your onboarding, that's just the starting point. That's just the tip of the iceberg. The mass of the iceberg comes down to all the other testing that we do before you even start your project. I mean, the first 3 weeks that our clients are going to be on board of this, they're pretty much going to be doing a very standardized process just to get themselves acquainted with measuring their biometrics, answering the subjective form in the evening, and communicating. That's it.
Yeah.
Only after the first 3 weeks, once we have created a relationship, and once you've, more importantly, created a relationship with yourself, that's when things start to get sexy. But the reason why it takes 3 weeks is because we don't rush.
Yeah.
In order to get things right, you need to invest time. And this is why, this program is capped. I cannot help 100 people doing this. There's no way. I cannot help 50 people doing it this way. We are able to help 20 people, and that's it. Anything more than that, we're not providing a quality service. And the reason for that is the volume of time. To do one, as an example, Chris, for you guys out there, to do one blood chemistry analysis, if you go to your local GP, Chris, have you had bloods done through a doctor?
I have. Oh, it was actually a while ago, just from a GP.
And I want to ask you, in the consultation after having had your bloods done, how long did the doctor actually look at your panel of bloods and tell you what's wrong with you?
Yeah, 0.
So last year, I went to a plethora of different specialists to learn more about the subject matter and more about myself. And what I've come to understand is I met 2 really good doctors and I met 20 shit ones. And I'm sorry to say it, but they are absolutely SH1T, because they, especially one that I paid over $200 for one consultation for, took 10 minutes, look at my bloods, give me a prognosis, which was completely inaccurate. And the reason why I know this is because I have my own blood chemistry panel software that I run my own tests through and able to see different multiple aspects of systems and how they correlate, not just one field. And to do that takes 3 to 5 hours for one panel, as opposed to 10 minutes in a doctor's office.
Yeah.
It takes 3 to 5 hours to be able to properly analyze a blood chem panel. And that's what we do here, is that we're not here to rush the process because you've already done that and it hasn't gotten you anywhere. We're here to slow things down so that you can go faster in the things that matter rather than being distracted by everything that doesn't.
Dude, amazing. All right. Well, look, this is a no-brainer. If you're listening and watching right now and actually want to do something with your health, want to be able to get in shape, want to be able to take better care of yourself, and you're a high performer, then click the link, book in a strategy call. We'll figure out if we actually can help you first and at least put you on your way to be able to having the right plan. And if not, no hard dramas. You can take the plan that we just set you up with anyway and you just run with it.